As I've just recently found out through a CIA encrypted download and $60 straight out of my pocket, Nintendo has a serious knack for phenomenal remasters. I'm not sure if this is even legal to say, but boy am I glad to have pirated Bowser's Minions through the Citra emulator. After having beaten Superstar Saga on 4 separate occasions through the gone but not forgotten emulator online, it was refreshing to play through a fantastic graphical reinterpretation of 16 to whatever number bit the new version is. While today's video will be of the original, it goes without saying Superstar Saga and the Mario and Luigi series in general was an entirely different take on Mario and RPGs for its time.
In tandem with the main console Paper Mario line, it drastically changed the landscape of Nintendo's IPs, making way for multiple sequels and making quite a bit of cash along the way. The bosses are nothing to marvel at, but still manage a heaping list strong enough to warrant a ranking. It's been a long time since Jack and I have kickstarted a video series like our Arkham or Souls boss rankings, so to finally get back to our ways is an exciting premise. Without further ado, let's get it started.
Piranha Bean, he's not a boss and I stand by that. I didn't even have him on my list because he's a glorified enemy whose existence in universe is to be a rather disgusting waste of time. If I was on a quest to get a bean fruit and had to pull one out of Alex's throat, I'd tell that French dude to kick rocks. Just saying.
As the tutorial boss of the game, the amount of engagement here is virtually zero. The real challenge is remembering not to button mash the dialogue too hard, lest Toad torment you with a meandering and unneeded tutorial. I've gotten pretty good at avoiding these over the years, but I still think games putting the repeat that option as the default following a long boring string of text is an obnoxious practice.
It's a theme for Nintendo bosses to get better as they come. In a slow progression, we go from Bowser to Bowser number 2, and I hold Fawful in high regard as he's the indicator that the introduction is finally done. Overexposure strikes again, I'm sure. I just can't stand how long it takes to slog through it, so any form of combat brightens up the mood. If you know how to jump, you'll fare alright, I think.
Wiggler is a totally random throwaway boss that comes out of nowhere. While his appearance in some form or another would become a tradition in later games in the series, this particular incarnation is pretty lackluster. I had a very embarrassing fight with him here, which is a shame since I was planning on one-shotting and basing my script around that. Just pretend you didn't see this.
I can't even lie, Tolstar dekes me out like Prime Lavion. All those sort of attacks that either hit you or bounce right over you trip me up, this included. He's a real schmuck, but a nice way to get to know bros attacks, although collecting 100 Bean coins is both a monumental waste of time and creates a whole new level of unnecessary immersion. Okay, so at this point it's a 10-to-1 ratio of mushroom to bean coins, yet later on PC gives you like, what, 99 trillion or something, and it's worth like 100? I mean, Alex made the point that maybe Cackletta busted the Wall Street or whatever bean variant of Wall Street there is, but one way or another, we're getting played. You see what I mean about immersion? Anyways, Tolstar, back to Tolstar. There's literally nothing to this fight. Tolstar, like a toll to pass through Stardust Fields, I just blew your mind.
Apparently this challenge is halfway up Hoo Hoo Mountain, but I call BS on that. It takes a pretty long time to get here and there's only like 3 rooms left after Hoo Hoo Roos or something. The fight is a refreshing break from the monotony of curb stomping beans and dry bones for the past half hour, which is nice. If you know to destroy the pillar he's not hiding under, then it goes down pretty easy, but it's at least something different. Its attacks are all just lasers, but lasers are cool by me, so I'm not majorly miffed by that. Pretty random irrelevant boss, but it's not like bad or anything.
Popple's like Boingo from JoJo's. He has that obnoxious wordplay where he says a phrase after everything like Boingo rasps out yes at every given opportunity. This poor dude lost a friend in battle and is a loner when you find him again in Chucklehuck Woods. You'd think he would have caught on by now, but I guess not. The fights with Rookie are already easy enough, and without his smo, this game's Ornstein, like the real one, is bar none easy solo.
I did a minimum level run of this game once, and of all the places to get stuck, this was actually the big choke point for me in difficulty. I hated this fight for a while afterwards out of salt, but if you're doing a normal playthrough, it's really not that bad. Use the opposite element to take out the little guys and blow your BP on beating up the mastermind. Kinda cool when the hand moves are used in boss fights, so I like that part of it. Otherwise, pretty unremarkable.
There's always a first for everything, so welcome to our first ranking of a ranking. If you didn't know, there's 7 Koopalings. We count them overall in the main one, but we're gonna rank each individual Inquisitor right now. Anyone else see the connection? Number 7, Ludwig von Koopa. I made sure to get this ranking because I was blessed to have fought the new version very recently. I love how the original one was undoubtedly the worst, so they tried to remaster him, and the new version's even worse than the other one. Both can suck my ass, especially the new one, and from beginning to end, shout out the beginning for killing me more than any other boss, Ludwig is a twat.
Number 6, Lemmy Koopa. Bosses that clone themselves are incredibly annoying, and me not knowing how to do Bounce Bros Advance to attack multiple enemies made this even more of an obnoxious slog. I had awful luck here and the fight took way longer than it should have. Boring and repetitive, but nowhere near as frustrating as either version of Ludwig and his Border Bros from Hell pre-fight minigame.
Number 5, Roy Koopa. It's amazing how indiscernible these guys are considering they've been around for a couple decades at this point, leading me to say Roy and Ludwig are the only ones I can point out without giving it a thought. Some may make fun of him for it, but I find his dress commendable. His fight in this game, not so much. I mean, it's pretty basic, like about 21 of the other 22 bosses, and who the hell needs 10 moves to beat this guy? Just get the mush badge, stupid face.
Number 4, Morton Koopa. I don't even know if he's different from Roy other than lacking Roy's cool shades and the babam, but I didn't die to Morton and I died multiple times to Roy for some reason, which pissed me off, so I prefer Morton.
Number 3, Iggy Koopa. Alex and I both agree that the combat of this game grows tiresome after endless run-ins with spikies and beans in Bean Fields, so I like it when an enemy or boss has moves that make themselves vulnerable. You can knock Iggy out in one back and forth turn if you have the absurd power levels I had, so I appreciate him for making it quick.
Number 2, Wendy Koopa. She had this one ring move that I thought was kinda neat and was able to dodge it by panic jumping, which was lucky. One of the more unique attacks for sure, so props for that.
Number 1, Larry Koopa. I'm not a tennis or racket sport enthusiast in particular, but I enjoy Larry's fight a lot actually. It's like the electric ball move from Cackleta's Soul where completing a volley is just satisfying and feels nice.
Dragohoho is the first boss that I've considered to pose an actual threat, not that he's out here taking names or anything. He's flat out impossible to dodge if you don't make him shorter by violently compressing his spine with jumping attacks, which can throw off anyone unfamiliar with the gimmick of the fight. Dragohoho can puke out giant rocks to fight his newly acquired manlet status, but the Mario Bros don't take too kindly to height fraud and are perfectly capable of reducing those rocks to rubble in one move. As long as you keep him at eye level, he's not going to be landing many blows, but the added complexity of the height mechanic makes it a bit more interesting than the average throwaway duel.
In games like this, I know the boss is like the bottom of my feet, so I like to connect through words. Last night, as in the night before scripting, Alex and I were hanging out, and as we were deciding the final rankings, we ran across Trunkle, of whom I completely blanked out on. Trunkle, like a tree trunk, and also like a tree trunk, he's totally bland and unrecognizable from any other mid-game boss this game throws your way. When he splits up, it comes down to luck on whether or not you make contact with the real one, so I always figured to do knockback bros and find out quick. His suck attack's neat.
Popple is unique in that he's given his own special boss theme to separate him from the other bosses, which in turn makes him a lot more memorable and is a large part of why he's a fan favorite character. Bowser becoming an amnesiac errand boy for a bumbling kleptomaniac is a funny idea that's a nice way to slide a 2 vs 2 fight into the game. These Popple and Rookie fights are some of the most recognizable parts of the game for me, and even though this one is pretty bare bones, I still like it a good deal. Rookie's attacks in response to Popple being targeted are my main complaint though, and one reason I don't have this fight higher. It gets old really fast watching him lob slow-moving hammers at you whenever you attack Popple, which is who I always take out first since I want the XP he drops that you lose if you kill Rookie first. Popple tries to snatch your stuff as usual, although fortunately he tends to take mushrooms most of the time, which isn't a big deal compared to his hammer stealing. While iconic, there are other far more mechanically interesting fights that push this one to the upper middle of the pack. I
honestly don't know if they could make a fight feel longer if they tried. The word repetitious gets tossed around like french fries, but my god, couldn't they have done something? Anything? It's not even like bad, it just goes on forever. If the Demon Princes were 25 minutes long, not as many people would like them, and in an opposite sort of way, Hermie would be more engaging if he had less health. Or if they made the shell a phase like the second Fawful fight. Nonetheless, the fight is astronomically worse with repeated moves wasted on burning off his shell. I think the idea was there, but the execution was horrible. Like just about every other middle of the pack Nintendo boss, Hermie III is completely unremarkable and only this high up because of the somewhat semblance of a challenge he brings to the table.
Birdo is a character that is actually very relevant in Jack and I's childhood. In elementary school, we always thought she was super stupid looking, so we made this bizarre comic called Birdo's Humpathon, with minimalistic art and an incomprehensible narrative that we still can't understand, featuring intriguing original characters such as Joey and Slave Toad. It was our proudest work back in 4th grade and holds up surprisingly well. Is this relevant to a discussion about boss design and the quality of Popple's final stand? Not particularly, but it's absolutely hilarious and I didn't want to pass up a chance to show this thing off to the world. The fight itself is basically the first Popple and Rookie fight, but instead of Rookie's hammers and fireballs, it's Birdo's explosive eggs and snout inhaling. These are a bit more fun to dodge, so I'd say Birdo makes for a more entertaining foe than Rookie overall. They're light on health just like practically every other boss in the game, but it's fun while it lasts.
Jo Jora's claim to fame isn't this boss fight, a surprise to some I'd say, rather her existence as a tour guide through one of the longest and most tedious endgame levels in RPG history. Joke's End was crap all around, although the satisfaction of being done plus it getting topped off with an actually good boss fight was deserved. Jo Jora has basically no role in this fight. If you counter her at any point during any time she does her lone move, she runs, leaving you with Chucklina, Oholina, or other name drop callbacks to areas of recent past you can choose from. I freaked out at first because I thought they all would have a different fight via some sort of moveset connected to the area they're named after, but it comes out they're all the same, but that isn't actually a half bad idea. Really, it's like if 2008 Hulk was nerfed and removed of thought process, and one of the easier endgame bosses at that.
I'm actually a big fan of this fight personally, and it's only not higher up because Jack killed Popple early so he never even knew that they had their own bros attacks. I think the idea of a boss having bros attacks is really neat and makes this fight a lot more interesting than most are. And it's actually got not one but two of them, which is impressive considering Superstar Saga's usual lack of moveset variety. Also, I need to point out Popple's hilarious facial expressions. I think the remake is the far better way to play Superstar Saga in almost every regard, but I will give the edge to the original in this one spot. His angry eyes and exaggerated toothy grin are character design gold. This fight is still reminiscent of the first encounter back at the chateau, but the added spice a bigger health bar and snazzier moves brings to the table makes this one of my favorite fights the game has to offer.
I don't know if there's Chuckalator stands out there, but if there is, count me in. He's one of my favorite looking bosses to date, and even though the premise of his character is sorta goofy, I consider this the first true challenge of the game, if you didn't stat pad like both of us. Even with an abundance of POW, this is no easy task for early game. The Chucklehuck Woods in general were a step up from the casual strolls through Bean Bean Fields and Hoo Hoo Mountains, so a legitimate challenge, or at least relative to those that came before it, is fitting. He's really what Hermie should have been, a shielded first phase, aggressive second phase, and limited but completely passive third phase to allow the player to catch up on HP, BP, and just pile on damage. The early game overall is the best part of Superstar Saga, and with it capping off with this boss, Chuckalator gets the thumbs up from both of us.
I like this fight a good deal, but my god is the clone mechanic annoying. I'm horrible at Bounce Bros Advance as I mentioned earlier, and that's the only way you can damage multiple enemies at this point in the game. So unless there's some way to tell the clones apart I'm not aware of, it's total luck. My luck here was horrible, and this was the longest fight in the game for me by a long shot other than the final boss for this reason alone. I also got poisoned by the bat move and was on death's door half the time. This isn't really the fault of the fight though, it's just me being uncharacteristically bad at the game. Poison is pretty rare in this game, so I don't mind it making a rare appearance here. This is another fight like the Popple matches where it has its own dedicated theme, which is cool as always. I don't think her theme is as good as Popple's, but it's alright. I like that last final phase where she freaks out on you. Her side profile is pretty nuts looking. All the side profiles in this game are horrifying, to be honest. This is only the tip of the iceberg. Blablanodons always scares the life out of me because I forget how toothy it is. Anyways, I'm glad Cackletta is a good boss, since Lord knows I needed something to offset the boredom of Hoo Hoo University.
I've beaten this game 4 times, and Queen Bean holding up this well was the biggest surprise to come out of it all. It's not immensely deep by any means and really isn't that astounding on paper, but there's just something about the unique design of this fight that does 2 things. 1, makes it fun, 2, reminds me of Wolnir. I mean, come on. At this point, all you can do is jump to attack or curb stomp with Slash Rose Advance, so Queen Bean's design is focused on making that aspect of the fight difficult for the player. Her crown damages you when you jump on it, so you have to break both of her bracelets, which in trade makes her more aggressive but also opens her head for attack. Lay it on enough and she'll topple over. You'd think she wasn't built like that, you know, the game points out she got infected and stuff, but yeah, she's actually that big, and also Lady Lima has a gigantic schnoz. No offense.
This fight is definitely one of the better ones in the game, but to be honest, I think his health pool is criminally low. I came to this fight with level 31 bros, which is far from over-leveled, and still stomped him in literally 1 cycle. That complaint aside, it's a very unique multi-stage fight that works kind of like Hermie III if he wasn't an insanely tanky, drawn-out snooze fest. Once you dodge his spinny laser balls, he hides in a giant robot house shaped like his head, but clearly no one ever told him about what happens to dogs and babies when you leave them in hot cars. Show him why that's a bad idea with Fire Bros, and he'll shoot himself out, becoming vulnerable to normal attacks. I just nuked him here, but normally it'll take 2 cycles to take him down. Honestly, the best part about this fight is the incredibly chaotic ending cutscene, which has some good slapstick culminating with Luigi bashing his head open with a sledgehammer and sending him flying thousands of feet down until he explodes or something. How he survived this is beyond me, but I loved him in Inside Story, so I'm thankful regardless. While I'm not as big a fan of the second Fawful fight as Jack, there's no denying it stands out compared to the vast majority of fights.
You could definitely make a case for Balletta and Cackletta's Soul being a single combined unit, but for scripting's sake we figured the best option was to split them in 2 over talking about both fights at once. They're totally separate from each other, besides that one's inside the other. And yeah, it's without question Cackletta's Soul is noticeably better than every other boss in this game by a large margin. Balletta is the best non-Cackletta's Soul boss for sure though. It's a pretty great and hectic arena, and her moveset's the most challenging there is up to that point. She gets overshadowed by the monster that follows, but Balletta is by no means anything worse than great.
Bowser sure has it rough in this game. He's fired out of a cannon, given amnesia, picked up as a goon by a passing thief, gets the snot beat out of him twice, and as soon as he gets his memory back, he gets someone else's soul shot into his body and it turns him into a hermaphrodite. As if that wasn't awful enough, after Balletta takes enough of a beating, she decides to give you a sneak peek of Bowser's inside story by inhaling both Mario and Luigi, which I imagine would go down about as smoothly as a bowling ball coated in rubbing alcohol. I'm amazed that Bowser wasn't traumatized for life after all this was said and done. However, if Cackletta didn't shack up inside of Bowser, would never have gotten this fantastic final boss. So I say it's a fair trade, and I'd put Bowser through it again in a heartbeat. Sorry, champ. Cackletta's Soul has by a long shot the most unique and varied attack pool in the game, my favorite being the Time Freeze Laser Eyes move. The Fawful clone is a cool one also, although he looks kinda ghostly, so I always wondered if he originally did die in this game and they just retconned it in Partners in Time. Her theme is a pretty intense iconic one, befitting of a final boss, and the kill the limbs to reach the heart mechanic is a time-honored RPG final boss trope. There's some extra strategy added by all the body parts having different elemental weaknesses as well. The arm attack is also just a really fun one to block since it's so easy and satisfying to knock them away. Cackletta's Soul is an excellent finale to the game, and while I'd say Superstar Saga has a far weaker boss lineup than the later games, Cackletta's Soul is definitely one of the strongest fights in the series as a whole, and bar none Superstar Saga's finest boss fight.
Thank you all so much for watching. This is personally my favorite Mario line of games and one of Alex's favorites as well, so we're glad to finally have found a way to get this out. Be sure to check in soon for our ranking of the bosses of this series' Black Sheep, Partners in Time. And otherwise, remember to like and subscribe if you haven't, and drop a comment on video recommendations, thoughts, or just a nice compliment. Thank you for watching, and with that said, Deuces.